the unrest and the anxiety that I was feeling about what I was doing was because I didn't feel like the work that I was doing was meaningful. I started kind of leaning into doing other things besides working my 9 to 5. That's when I really started to realize like you are a little bit of a disruptor. In terms of, I knew I was a troublemaker when when I started to get a little older. I never considered myself to be a troublemaker at all. I was always called a good girl. I followed rules. I did not like to get in trouble. I had a great head on my shoulder. These are the things that people said out of love to me, like, you're so good, you're so well behaved, you don't cause trouble, you're so smart, you have a great head on your shoulders. And I never saw myself as a disruptor or a troublemaker. Never. Um, I now being after, going through what I've gone through and, starting Boxed in Black and, starting, this would be my second business that I started. I feel like I didn't realize that I was a disruptor or a troublemaker for good, probably until I hit my mid 30s. I had been somebody that had always followed the rules, done test the waters before I wanted to try something, checked with my family, make sure that they were going to support me, checked with my friends. Does this sound crazy? Does this sound like a dumb idea? So I had always done that. And so once I started kind of leaning into doing other things besides working my 9 to 5, that's when I really started to realize like you are a little bit of a disruptor. You do things different. You've always done things differently. You've always kind of just done things your own way. You were called stubborn, which, as somebody who was described as a good girl, stubborn, I could live with that, right? Like I could live with people calling me that. But I didn't really think I was ever like a true disruptor until I started doing the work that I'm doing now, which is Boxed in Black. I was blogging before. I did a Cape Verdean food and recipe blog. It was something that just didn't exist before. So kind of reflecting and getting older, that's when I would really say that I learned that, hey, maybe I am a disruptor. But there were clues along the way. I think that just my identity of being like a good girl, I didn't really pick up on. So there was this one time where I got in so much trouble as a kid because I my grandmother used to pack my lunch, and I get really tired of eating the same thing every day. I get really tired of it. So I came up with this idea and I was like, I'm going to sell my lunch that I did not want. Like I'm going to sell the granola bar, I'm going to sell this and that, and I'm going to see like who in my class wants to buy it. So I didn't even remember doing this until one of my teachers told my grandmother that I was selling my lunches in school. And of course, I wasn't selling the whole thing. That was not what was happening. I was just selling the parts that I did not want anymore. I got in so much trouble. My grandmother was like, I can't believe you're selling your lunch. And it was like this thing that they did not let go. And I think that that was probably my entrepreneur coming out at a young age. So I mean, looking back on it, if that's the biggest thing I got in trouble for, like I wasn't, not, it wasn't that big of a deal, but I just remember I got in so much trouble and I felt so bad for doing it, but it just seemed like a really smart idea. It seemed like a really smart idea to a fourth grader. So I'll never forget that. And I always say that was my first clue that I was going to be an entrepreneur and a disruptor.